Greetings, building science enthusiasts, and welcome back to the Building Science Podcast. This week's episode has no sponsor message at all. Instead, I just wanted to take a minute and thank you, our listeners, for all you do to keep this show going. We've got some great episodes coming up on topics like perspectives from HVAC installers, indoor air quality, market change, enclosures, how codes affect building science, chemicals in homes, building materials, etc. And to help to keep the show going, I'd like to ask a small favor of you. There's actually a lot you can do to support us in very simple ways. You could share just a single episode with someone who might be interested. You could even share this episode. You can review the show on iTunes, Google, and Stitcher. You can visit our sponsors and their websites and let them know that we sent you there. And you can even encourage the manufacturers that you know to sponsor the show. We love doing this, and we plan on continuing to do it for as long as we possibly can, and as long as you keep showing up to listen. So thank you again. Please do the very small bit that you can to help us out. And we have an Instagram too, if that's your thing. It's at BLDGScienceATX. So check us out and enjoy the rest of the episode.
Welcome to this.
Welcome to the
Building Science Podcast.
Welcome to the Building Science Podcast.
Bringing the human factor to architecture and design.
Brought to you by Positive Energy in Austin, Texas.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Building Science Podcast. I'm Kristof here, as always, with my trusty sidekick. Hey-o! That's Miguel Walker. I also have in the studio, I have Nacho Moreno.
Hey, guys.
And he's with New Results, HVAC firm here in Austin, and he and I go way back. Please introduce yourself briefly.
Hey, guys. I'm Nacho with New Results, a local air conditioning company here in Austin, and we've evolved in the air conditioning technology with Kristof and Positive Energy.
And then on the line, we have Patrick Wilks with Wilks HVAC in San Antonio. Is that actually the name of your company?
The name of the company is Wilks Air Conditioning out of San Antonio. And obviously, my name is Patrick. And we've been in business here in town since 1974 and just have seen a huge shift from old style equipment and new age technology. And we're excited to be on the cutting edge of that and here with you today.
Context for this, you guys listening, is that separately, Nacho and Patrick and I have had some really great conversations about the state of the industry, I guess you could almost say. The industry is really, so the HVAC industry, the industry that is basically responsible for installing the equipment and distribution systems in homes that deliver comfort and indoor air quality, right? So that industry is in the midst of a transition. And instead of me talking about it from the outside, I really appreciate when I hear like an insider's view. Nacho, I guess I'd like to start with you. When did you get started? How did you get started?
Oh, New Results, we started in 2002.
Mm-hmm.
So
16 years
ago. And of course, we did a lot of, completely all Unitary. We actually partnered together when you were building back then.
Yeah, Blue Heron Builders. Nacho was my air conditioner.
That's how we met. And about 8 years ago, we started kind of getting more into the VRF and inverter systems. You've been instrumental in pushing the VRF system. Yeah.
Well,
so I remember back then, it's like, have you heard about City Multi? Kind of put that in my head, and now it's 98% of our business. So.
Wow. Yeah, we'll get into that. And so, Patrick, how about you? What's your background? How long have you been doing this?
So our background as a company is we started in 1974. Father started the business, and then I grew it from there. I started working with him as a teenager, putting in 8-SEER, 10-SEER. I think 12 was a super high efficiency system at the time. Grew up just learning that beer can cold was enough, and ductwork was just something you put up with. And then eventually, through the years, took over the business. And with the advent of high efficiency air conditioning, when X13 motors and ECM drives and things like that, ductwork was always important, but became even more important as we saw the efficiency creep up on standard residential products. The ductwork, we found we were having problems that we couldn't solve with Freon. And so through testing and education and learning about airflow and static pressure and system design and everything else, we were able to fix a lot of interesting problems that we came across Some we created and some others created.
Well, how did that go within the company? I mean, so it sounds like somebody in the same company is saying, hey, this thing that we did wasn't right.
Yeah. So the stuff that we did that wasn't right, we took care of. Do what's right for the customer, and it'll treat you well. Mm-hmm. So things that I learned and we learned as a business that we were doing wrong, we corrected. That led to referrals, and hey, my aunt has this problem or that problem, and we grew it from there. And it's the ductwork and testing. We do a lot of duct blaster testing and blower door testing in house for diagnosis purposes, not for code purposes. And that has become a big part of our business, which led us into more and more homes, and those homes started to have the VRF equipment. Mainly, we see a lot of Mitsubishi in our area, some ducted, some not ducted, and then that led us to builders who use this stuff on a regular basis, and we were fixing several problems of old companies they used, and they just started using us from the start then, instead of having to worry about fixing it later.
So what services do you offer? I mean, it sounds like residential new construction as well as service. Is that right? Yeah,
90% of our business is residential retrofit. We do some of our work in light commercial, mainly RTUs, single story buildings, things like that.
I think you should define RTU.
Rooftop package unit. So everything's combined. It's just you set a box on top, and then there's ductwork that comes out of the bottom and distributes through a little strip center or shopping center or whatever it might be.
Okay, well
office
said.
Building.
Just want to get that clear.
Sure. Thank you for pointing that out. We do some new construction and remodel retrofit things through a couple of builders here in San Antonio.
And that remodel work, is that down to the studs or different phases? I mean, is it substantial remodels, gut remodels?
We're working on one now that they bulldozed the house and built new. Other ones they've gutted. Other ones are just an addition. So it runs the gamut from everything from complete new through basic room addition or things like that. Just a reworking of the floor plan.
Okay. And so Nacho, what about you? What are you guys doing?
Pretty much now we're 90% new construction and major remodel.
Wow, 90% new construction. I've heard that's a challenging market to be in.
It is. A lot of people say that the money's on the service side.
Uh-huh.
And our business model's kind of taking us the other way. So we service what we sell, and I tried not to service VRF systems that other people have installed just because of the complexity. So we'll help people here and there, but
yeah.
Then we'll talk about the complexity of the VRF.
Absolutely, VRF. So, those of you listening, that one of the fundamental pivots in the industry that we're definitely going to be digging into is this standard unitary equipment that's been around forever, or since the 50s, 60s, I guess 60s, 70s came down. Interestingly, on that, Nacho, I was just talking to a distributor yesterday, and the client had a VRF system installed, and they didn't want to use their installing contractor to do service for various reasons, probably not the greatest experience. And other installers, other VRF firms are starting to say, no thanks, I don't want to service it because I didn't install it, and I'm not sure if the right wire aug was used and if it was set. There's just who knows what you're walking into.
Yeah, and something that's mundane is just run in the copper. If they didn't have it covered or didn't perch with nitrogen, it could cause problems. And these are very, very complex systems that you're getting into a can of worms.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So have you ever serviced someone else's, Patrick? Someone else's VRF?
We always service someone else's VRF.
All right.
So send them our way, Nacho.
No, definitely.
And for that reason, and most of our clients have come through us through, hey, I need a repair. I need, I'm not happy with this. It's never worked right, since it's been put in. I've put up with it for 4, 5, 6, 10 years. I'm tired of it. I just want it fixed, that sort of thing. And I absolutely love the challenge of that. And it is very complex. And there's a lot of moving parts in terms of, like Nacho says, a great point, just something as simple, not purging nitrogen. We go through that quite often where we find screens are clogged or orifices are blocked because of debris in the lines. that's probably one of the more common issues that we have. So the initial installation was wrong from the start, and it never had a chance.
Mm-hmm.
So we absolutely love that. I've got great minds in our technicians here, and they love a challenge in figuring it out, and we'll stay on something for a while to get it licked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to stay with this theme. So, Nacho, do you also do, and you can name names on this podcast, you do Mitsubishi, you've done some
Mitsubishi Carrier.
LG, Daikin, have you done those?
We haven't done Daikin. We're moving away from the LG.
And you, Patrick, Mitsubishi and other brands? Or
mainly, we've only installed Mitsubishi. We have worked on Daikin and LG and Mitsubishi. So we've worked on a few of them. I haven't come across any Carrier product yet. I'm very comfortable with the Mitsubishi product as far as installation, setup, the controls it has available, and we've stuck with that because it's been reliable for us.
Yeah, I want to stay with that, and I'll stay with you for a minute, Patrick. Call a spade a spade. One of the things that's happening in our market is VRF is starting to take over. I mean, it's happening around the country. It's getting more and more installation, more and more bandwidth. And there's this perception rising now that Mitsubishi systems are inherently flaky, that their controls are flaky, that there's just something like, like gremlins in the machine that no one can understand. Is that your experience, Patrick?
That's not my experience at all. I think the lack of understanding is definitely out there, all the way from technical assistants down to the installers, and so it's really hard to get a handle on how to set it up, what this dip switch does, what does this mean, how does this actually translate into real life working conditions compared to what even technical training through Mitsubishi will tell you the way it's supposed to do.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Figuring out that this dip switch setting doesn't quite function the way the book says it does is instrumental. We've spent a lot of time testing and figuring it out on our own, how it actually performs in real life. And most of it is pretty accurate, right? I don't want to paint with a broad brush. Some of the finer details don't quite work out as well as the printed instructions say.
Yeah.
Well, printed instructions are like Google translated, and
yes,
and that's across the board. I mean, we've just seen it with LG, and there's quite a bit of, with your point, settings that are not even in the IO that are just.
Can you say crazy. What the IO is? Just
the installation and operation manual. So, like for example, LG VRF comes factory set to overheat up to 7 degrees Celsius, which is like 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So coming you start up a system, and in the winter you get a call that people are saying, well, my house is almost 80 degrees and my thermostat is 69.
Whoa.
Well, what's going on? And it's what kind of a hidden menu that we've now we've known a lot of those hidden menus.
Wow. So you guys have both kind of, through the school of hard knocks and intelligence and exertion and perseverance, you've both gotten to the point where you're comfortable installing these systems. What was that like? I mean, either one of you, it's like,
it's
Can
challenging.
you help other people follow your path?
I can see somebody coming up to a VRF system, opening up the lid, and just seeing those circuit boards and going like, what?
Yeah. How do you get past that?
Well, we kind of just grew into them and taken any advantage of training that we can, and they're actually, once you know the systems, they're pretty easy to troubleshoot. But at first, if you're used to just a contactor or a defrost board, it could be challenging, overwhelming for just a regular guy.
Yeah, Patrick, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so our first really dive into VRF full force came through a home performance evaluation where they just had a lot of humidity. Some of their grills would just rain down every summer, and very, very fancy home. And we go into this guy's basement, and there are 21 ducted high static Mitsubishi air handlers with branch boxes and 4 condensers outside. I had never seen even that in my life. So, sitting there looking at it and going through
That's
the groundsman.
That's a deer in the headlights moment.
Yeah, and he was saying, can you help? Y'all were recommended to us, and can you help? And started looking at it, and at first, your first reaction is, no, I don't know anything about it. And then on second thought, you take a step back and look at it. Well, basic principles still apply, and refrigerant flows and air flows, and you have static pressure and you have controls. And so you take it piece by piece, and that really helped us just get into it. And so you take it piece by piece, and you learn how the systems work, and get some equipment with the Mitsubishi, especially. They have their little computer aided thing that gives you a lot of the values for troubleshooting in terms of
the
all their
MN
sensors,
converter, right? Maintenance tool software.
the maintenance tool, and that was instrumental. So once you dive into it just a little bit and understand that it's just an air conditioner, and it just ports refrigerant different ways at different times and in different amounts, it's very simple to see what's going on.
So what you're having implicit there is you're like taking a deep breath, going, okay, what's going on here? Let me think about this. I can tell you that I have had installers, like angry installers on the phone, saying, this is exactly why I don't like this cheap crap out of Asia, right? And I'll just be a little blunt about it. Usually it's people a little more advanced in their career. And I feel like what they're really saying is, I don't know this stuff.
I don't understand it. Yeah, that's why I don't like it.
Yeah, so you guys got past that somehow. And I'm really curious. I guess it's maybe just personality types.
In our case, we like challenges. We like new technology, and we like to be in the cutting edge. So that can help quite a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I have a desire to fix things that nobody else can or has. And so that gets me into a lot of problematic situations where, you kind of put it out there, and you need to perform or be embarrassed by it. And so I end up learning and reading a lot. And that's more of it than anything, is just a desire to figure things out. And like Nacho said, enjoy the challenge and enjoy the technology behind it. It's what's coming in the future. So you might as well learn it now. Same as all the ECM technology motors, when those were coming out, all those are dumb. And, you heard the same things, but now you can't hardly buy a standard Unitary product without some sort of electronically controlled motor in it.
Our Unitary systems are inverter driven. So
yeah,
we're doing Bosch inverters. So that would be our Unitary line. I think we've done 2 regular ECM systems this year.
Wow. New. And what did they?
They were just retrofits.
They were retrofits. Okay.
Yeah, but pretty much we stayed with inverter because heat pump. These heat pumps, the heating point down to 17 degrees is for our area is perfect, right? So there's no need to do gas furnaces. And if we go with products like Mitsubishi's Hyperheat down to 5 degrees,
yeah,
and it's even better.
Yeah. So where I want to go down into that a little bit later. Your installation process, and I want to talk about how you engage with your clients, your builders, things like that. But there's one thing I want to kind of get out of the way, and it has to do with our culture right now, and it has to do with probably when you two or people from your firms walk in and you're first talking to clients, particularly like in a retrofit situation or a repair situation. I know from talking to friends and family, especially people that don't really know exactly, my role in the industry here, and they're irritated, kind of outraged with their air conditioning installer, or actually with trades generally. It's interesting, like plumbers, electricians, and so you guys are walking into a situation where the client, the person that you're talking to, probably doesn't know very much about what they're doing. They're uncomfortable. Thermally and psychologically. They don't feel, because of that, they don't feel much control of the situation. They're probably irritated, curt. I don't know. Have you guys either you had that experience where people you feel like are not being respectful of you?
We haven't run into that, and I guess we project this excitement about the systems that the customers kind of absorb.
Okay.
Sort of like you when you're talking to you. So kind of this passion, right?
Yeah.
We don't do a lot of, and this is where Patrick might encounter that more often, where there's problems. Since we do mostly new construction or big remodels, we just kind of introduce these new systems, how they could perform better, how we can have different type of equipment go into different parts of the house, zoning, and having such a large menu of air handlers makes it so much easier for zoning.
Okay. So, but you don't get that kind of like fix my problem for as cheap as possible and get out of here.
I think that's one of the reasons we've shied away from service. Because
unrealistic expectations from the client.
Correct. And just trying to, especially in something that's already been built with a really bad air duct system, that you can't really go in there and tear out unless, if you got a 2-story house with a single system zoned. They're just really bad practices, right?
So what about you, Patrick? Do you have to teach like psychological durability or toughness to your people that are doing face-to-face with clients? How do you handle that?
Every day. Every single day. Yeah, if somebody's hot in their home and they call your office, I mean, from the moment you pick up the phone at the office, right? It's an experience for the customer, and they're either going to be delighted that the dispatcher was helpful and got them an appointment as soon as possible, or they're going to be put out and disgruntled because we can't see them until 6 p.m. instead of 3 p.m. or something like that. The technician arrives at the house and the customer's hot, and everybody knows it's expensive, and it's not always expensive, but that's the thought. But like you said, to your point, is a lack of knowledge of the situation. And so what we have found that works really well is just educating the customer. We absolutely love customers to follow our technicians around. And that's something that every one of our techs are comfortable with and encourage, because now we can show you what we see. We can show you your motor. We can show you your ductwork falling apart. We can show you a capacitor. And this is what we're finding. And so it's very helpful to educate the customer about repairs. And if somebody is educated and can kind of halfway grasp what's happening, they can make a better decision for themselves and be more confident in the fact that what we're saying is true. And then we back it up with a 100% money back guarantee. If it doesn't fix your problem, you don't pay us.
Well, you should be careful with that, Patrick. We've had issues with people suing us for having being right behind our technicians when a drain dog exploded.
What exploded again?
A drain dog is
a drain dog.
That's what it's called, but it's pretty much a balloon that you put into the drain line. So when you put nitrogen, it creates back pressure to blow out the drain line. Those are, of course, rubber, and
so a big rubber balloon exploded.
It's a small rubber balloon, but it makes sounds sort of like a 45. Of course, my guys didn't have any damage, but the lady that was behind them got hearing loss. Of course, there's a drum set in the garage. Air quotes. Yeah, there's a drum set in the garage, so who knows how long she's rocking out. Anyhow.
So you got a lawsuit against you, and how does that impact you? I mean, it's stressful.
It is stressful, and of course, once you get a lawsuit with a claim so large, the insurance company drops you. An insurance company that I've had since 2002, right? So
wow. And then you get expensive with the next.
Then you got to go find another one, and I think it's a 7-year period where you go with that claim, so where they can take you back. And so the stress of having to find another insurance that will take you with with a claim, and it's not fun. And people don't realize that we have to have insurance in order to do what we do. And
right.
I've heard one of our clients once say that you've really made it when you get your first lawsuit. So wear it like a badge of honor.
Yeah, so Patrick. With that caution in mind, I guess lawsuits are a part of life.
For me, they're not common, right? But it's something. It's a cost of doing business. We've got several trucks on the road all day. Last year, a guy gets into a fender bender. They literally had $300 worth of damage to the other person's car and sued us for $150,000.
Oh my gosh.
You turn it over to your insurance, and that's what insurance is for. And to Nacho's point, yeah, you do get dropped. and it is stressful, and it takes a focus away from your business. You know, your technicians are subpoenaed and questioned and everything else, and it's no fun at all. And now you pay higher liability insurance because of it. Ultimately, though, I hate just changing the way we operate. If what I believe we are doing is correct, then you can't spoil the whole bunch for one bad apple. And that's the way we view life here. And so, most people are good. Most people are honest, and most people will treat you like you want to be treated. And so we treat others like we want to be treated. And what I want out of somebody coming into my home is to show me what's going on, educate me on my roof, my plumbing, my dryer, whatever it is they're fixing, my sheetrock or tile. Like, show me and then provide me options, and I can make a better decision. And so that's what we try to do, is we show the customer what's happening. Now, we don't let them stick their fingers in the condenser fan motor to show them the compressor's hot or something silly, or advise them not to. I guess it's their house; they can do what they want. But we like to educate, and to me, that's what insurance is for. You have good relationships with insurance brokers; they deal with that. That's their job. And you say, "Hey, Mr. Broker, this is what's going on. Here's my lawsuit. You guys handle it. Let me know what we need to sign to, go on with life."
Is there a monetary impact, like a deductible to be met, or?
No, I didn't have any.
No, there's no deductible on that sort of thing on the liability side.
Okay.
But what happens, like what Nacho said, is your rates go up, and so next year you pay more for your insurance.
Yeah. I guess we'll move on from this very soon here and talk about design and installation and things like that. But really, my heart goes out to what you guys do. It's so important. It's not easy. It takes grit. I mean, it takes working in uncomfortable thermal conditions, awkward, cramped spaces, wriggling under houses, being like a monkey through attics sometimes, all while carrying tools and equipment. And you're also slogging through like a societal quagmire where, everyone in the world wants to just live in an Apple store and write apps or something. But we have physical bodies, we live in physical structures, and we have physical systems that it's like you guys should be the unsung heroes, not unsung. You should be the sung heroes of our industry.
Well, to that point, Kristof, it's funny you mentioned, because when we're looking at a new project, the customer doesn't have any problem spending $70,000 in plumbing fixtures.
You said 7 or 70?
70,000.
70,000 in plumbing fixtures,
And they'll buck for $5,000 extra on a dehumidifier.
Right, because they don't see it.
Because they don't see it, yeah. And so it's.
You ever have that happen, Patrick? I'm sorry.
No, the priorities are kind of
wacky.
But when the air conditioner goes out, then it doesn't matter if your fixtures are super pretty. You're suffering, right? So
we suffer from visual focus. Patrick, any stories like that?
The dehumidifier is first on the chop block for budget reasons every time, and it's a struggle to keep it in there. And that's where, in the retrofit market, we really get a lot of good interaction directly with the homeowner. And so you can show the homeowner directly. You're not talking through a builder or an architect or an engineer. You're able to talk directly with the homeowner, which is what I think you do a lot of, Kristof, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely.
At least pretty close anyway.
We do long interviews.
Yeah, so you can show that value and why that is not the place to cut. So a lot of times it'll work out, but it's always the first call. It's always, I think we're going to skip the dehumidifier. Just specifically that you brought up the good point. So it's funny.
Yeah. And, really you guys are working hard, and, all the things I just said about, taking grit and a lot of intelligence and deep thought and emotional fortitude. And now the industry changes from standard, 24-volt control unitary equipment to VRF, right? Microprocessor controlled. And it's kind of like as though it weren't challenging enough. So I can see why it's daunting. Let's start talking about the installation process, starting with the first step, which is you're talking with a client. Let's start with you, Nacho. Who are your clients? Are they homeowners? Are they builders?
Probably about 80% are builders. Of course, we love working when on a project that's got positive energy plans.
Oh, well, thank you. And I did not pay him to say that.
No, but it's,
Patrick, you've done one, I think, of our designs, or no, you haven't done one.
I haven't done. I have been invited to bid on one of your designs, which was a very nice gesture between the builder and you all. So, but we did not get that one.
You need to get one.
Every time I get an email containing a set of plans that's got a positive energy set, it's so joyful because I know that everything's been already addressed.
All right. Enough. Let's.
But anyway, so if we go through a regular process for where there's not a positive energy set, we like to talk to the architect and look at the plans, see where we can place equipment. That's
when are they talking to you? Early on?
Once first thing is I'll send them a bid.
So you see a floor plan already?
I see a floor plan. They approve it. Then we'll sit down with the architect and actually see where we can set the equipment. We'd like to try to get structural already in the line so that we can figure out our trunk lines, blockouts for trunk lines. If there's any issues with LVLs or anything where the structural is going to interfere with and even mundane things like can lights right in the blockout. Things that you have to kind of look out from the get-go. So then they go ahead and order trusses, and then we go in.
And what about you, Patrick?
Right. So 90% of our business is direct with homeowners, and then we go from there to talk to any architects or builders they might have. And so a lot of times it's existing homes. You have to deal with what you have and what's available and make things work that aren't necessarily ideal in terms of where you're going to place ducts and registers and diffusers and everything. I would say on the new equipment, on the new construction or highly remodeled side, a lot of times we're dealing directly with the homeowner who is working with a builder / architect. I would say maybe 2 jobs a year we work with a builder through an architect, directly in the design phase of the house. But most of our stuff happens, the house is built. Okay, now we need air conditioning. Oops, we forgot about that. Hey, I know these guys, and they call us and what do you think? And so sometimes they end up remodeling for us a little bit. And other times they say, this is what you've got. And even more times we'll end up walking away from a job because it's not going to be right. And it's not going to provide what the customer wants. And without a little give and take from both sides, we're the ones that are going to get called saying they're not comfortable when it's 103 degrees or even 80 degrees and 100% humidity. That's even worse.
Yeah, well, that's happened to us too, where we come into a job that's already been framed. We've had to walk out. There's no compromise with the architect. They wanting to dictate to what you're going to install and how you can run the ducts, and that doesn't work.
One of the things that we're doing is we're shifting when the mechanical system integration occurs earlier and earlier in the process. And we've been saying for a long time, and now we've had several really leading architects in our region. And I've said to them, I realize it's hard for you to get the budget to bring us in during massing. So the first thing architects do is called programming. And then it goes into schematic design development, and construction documents. But they do this thing, massing, orientation, and aperture. Those are like the first 3. And we say, hey, when you're doing massing, please give us a call. We'll do massing. Even if it's like we'll have a coffee together and it's like an unofficial thing. But that can streamline so much, meaning like, okay, you got this giant living room here. Let's make sure this wall is fatter, that we're going to have a high sidewall diffuser aimed at it. Or, and it's so important that this happen. This is in the custom home residential architect world. This needs to happen early because at some point the client's going to have what we call the swoon moment. And at that point, the design is not as easy, not as fluid. In fact, we just had one yesterday where, day before yesterday, we were in San Antonio, and they showed they should have a master bathroom, little mechanical closet, and a little water closet. And we just said to them, hey, could you just switch the location of the mechanical closet and the water closet so that our mechanical closet is not on an outside wall where the roof is pinching it and where we can get to the hallway on the other side to put our return? And they were like, oh, sure. Boom, done, Well, if it's on the field and they've already got that, waistline plumbed in, you can't do that. And then also with the structural engineers, it's been so rewarding, and I'll confess a little bit surprising to say, hey, could you? And they say yes. Or even with the truss shop, after structure, like, hey, we need these truss spacings. You got a truss that is smack in the middle of our mechanical closet, and that's going to interfere with upflow. Is there a way we can have a leave out or just adjust the truss spacing? Oh, sure.
Yeah, and it's so much easier to get that done. And I think you've done a great job of putting that out with the architects, because even if there's jobs that can't afford or
there are jobs that can't afford us. We should talk about cost for you guys too.
But they already have that in their mind, and when you come and approach them on a pre-construction meeting, it's really easy to get those changes.
Yeah, architects are hardworking. They care deeply about their projects, and when you tell them the truth, which is that, like, you're bringing this thing to life, and if you leave out room for the lungs, then what are you really bringing to life here? It's just an art project, or is it functional?
And I have a good analogy. You have a prime air conditioning system with really bad duct design. It's like, having a Ferrari with flat tires.
Yep, there you go.
You can't really
and you can put a great engine in it later, and the tires are still flat. You only get one chance. Well said. So let's talk about cost. So neither one of you, I think, are the least expensive option, and yet cost always matters. So let's say you're talking to builders. You're both talking to builders, and I guess let's make it specific to VRF if you guys think it's okay. And you can take the cost question a little liberally, but do you advocate for VRF? Does that cost more?
I always advocate for VRF. It does cost more, quite a bit more. And if budget restricts it, then we'll go into inverter system.
Mm-hmm. So Unitary with an inverter compressor.
Uh-huh. And sometimes it makes sense to go VRF, because if you have 3 Unitaries, 2 inverters, the price could almost be VRF. So it just depends. And then there's a cost of running extra electrical for heat strips and larger, wiring, that at the end of the day it makes sense to go VRF.
And what about gas furnaces? Are clients still wanting them? Are you still advocating?
Clients are still wanting them, and what we'll do is we'll do a dual fuel heat pump.
Okay.
With an inverter-driven VRF, and it comes. I had a chart somewhere where there's a breaking point where heat pump, and you might know this, is more efficient than gas until you get to a certain climate, right? So
VRF is definitely more expensive, not only for equipment wise, but it takes a little longer to install. You have to be more thoughtful while you're installing. It takes more copper to run to different air handlers, a little more thought in the layout and design of the house, new construction wise. It's a lot that goes into it. You can't necessarily just stick an air handler anywhere. Then you've got to pipe to it, and you've got to worry about condensate drains and things like that. But for us, ultimately, our selling point is comfort and control. And for a lot of the larger houses we get into, on the custom side, 7,000 square feet, they're building super tight enclosures, and you're going to put a 14 SEER single speed heat pump in. You've got a lot of ductwork running that's not necessarily going to be easy to do, and you're not going to be as happy with the outcome of it. So to be able to divide that house up into multiple little sections and systems is really nice with the VRF equipment. And I think the comfort and control, mainly control, is it opens people's eye.
And you mean zoning, I guess, specifically when you say control.
Right, with the zoning part of refrigerant-based zoning versus airflow zoning is the key. It's much more difficult to locate and install in different things, but the comfort and the reliability and control that you have as a result of that really makes the difference, and it makes it easy to show the customer. I'm personally building a home right now, and it's not incredible or anything, but it's 3,000 square feet, single story, big attic space. A unitary with ducted zoning would have fit wonderfully in there, and we would have used an inverter style compressor outside with a heat pump. But to Nacho's point, I would have had to run 100 amp to my electric heat strip in the attic. And so now I have a Mitsubishi S series with 3 indoor units that are ducted indoor units. But I've got my kids' rooms on one air handler, our master suite on one air handler, and the main living area on one. And I can control them completely independent of one another, not have to worry about an oil return during a zoning application where it's going to open up all zones, or I have to worry about the fan can only run at such a speed to worry about zoning and bypass and everything else. So it's definitely worth it, but it did cost us extra, even to get it at my cost and the time it takes to put it in. It is extra, but to me, it's worth it. So I could have cost of equipment. Let's just say I could have gotten the inverter with zoning for $5,000 for the equipment, and that's a sweet personal use deal. It cost me an extra $2,000 for the equipment and copper and controls that I needed.
And that's just for the boxes. That's not the labor.
That's just for the boxes, not for duct. Ductwork's about the same because you're still running ductwork to each bedroom. You do have a few more plenums to make, but that's not an incredible cost. But yeah, just the boxes were about $2,000 more in my rather small project from what we usually get into on that.
Yeah, so that's kind of our approach when we come to a customer with VRFs. Okay, and we try to do the same master suite on its own air handler, kids or guest rooms on one, and then the core, what I call the core of the house, which would be your living room, kitchen, dining room. If they have a casita or a studio, then that could have either a cassette or a
garage can have a ductless unit.
And we sell a lot of garage units because at the point that we're doing the roughing, running an extra set of copper lines to a garage, it's not that much, and they can easily add a ductless unit in the garage.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been an upsell for us. If there's enough capacity in the condenser. Yeah, if sometimes the condensers are a little oversized.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So you were bringing up that it costs more and it takes more thought, and it's interesting to kind of flip it around and think. So basically, cheap, thoughtless installations are easier to sell in some ways.
The Building Science Podcast is recorded in front of a live studio audience in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, like that's why we have so many on-demand water heaters, because you don't have to, they're not cheap, but you don't have to think about where they go. But so how do your clients evaluate quality? You said, Patrick, comfort and control.
That
absolutely,
and also that analogy you had about the car on the highway,
the exhaust. I mean, the no accelerator.
The accelerator, and they're just showing them that some of these systems will start out, when they first come on at half an amp and ramp up. It doesn't go full force unless you really have the load.
Yeah.
And so trying to explain that energy savings, and we've actually bought a kilowatt meter to put in some of our installs and show the customer, okay, well, your air conditioning system actually used $60 worth of your $400 electric bill. Now your air conditioner is not your biggest.
Yeah, we've been there so much, you guys, where the clients that do these high-end custom homes with the VRF systems, they're one of the things, and I really laud them for it, is that they're sensitive to energy use. And then they sometimes say, hey, what is this? You told me that we're going to have low energy use, and I have a high energy bill. And I can say, well, you have a swimming pool, because that's usually it. But I could tell you, for here at the office, we have circuit level energy monitoring, and I also have it at my house. And my house is a 3-ton. Here at the office is a 2-ton. I'm pulling like 4 or 5 amps, so 1,000, 1,200 watts over here. And the enclosure is really just a suggestion here. And over at my house, I'm pulling 35 amps at the same time. So there's a large difference.
Yeah, so I think like on the Bosch VR inverter, which is kind of a unitary, the system will a 5-ton unit will clock out at 13 amps.
Wow.
That's already considered overamping for the system.
That's the max it'll ever
Yeah, and it's like 8.5 for 3-ton.
Yeah, so Nacho actually installed that exact unit at my house, and it's made a world of difference on our electric bill because that was our highest usage every year.
Yeah.
And this summer, especially now that we've had a couple of months to look at the hot period, it's so much lower than it used to be.
Yeah.
That's really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Patrick? Are you able to sell energy, or are you seeing energy savings?
It's not something. It's not something that we focus on. For me, the energy savings is in terms of existing homes. You know, if you go into an existing home with a 4-ton air conditioner on 2,000 square feet and their utility bill is $200 a month, 60% of that might be your air conditioner, and so now you're dealing with $100 a month. If you drop their bill by half on their air conditioner, you're not really saving. It's $50 a month. You're not going to pay for the added cost of the VRF or even a high efficiency inverter system for that.
That's a really good.
And so we do focus, and you do see some savings, and it's good.
You just did $6,000 a year,
I'll take $50 a month.
20 years.
Yeah, right. So in terms of selling energy savings, that's something that we as a company have gotten away from. Is we don't focus on that. The Bosch system is an incredible unit. We've installed a number of them. I like it, and they run well, and they're a great inverter system to have in the unitary market. But I think the bigger selling point is comfort, and the analogy, like Nacho said, and I guess you had it too, is the car going down the highway. But that goes back to education and educating the customer across the table and saying, look, Acom Manual J design conditions for San Antonio, I believe is 97 outside and 78 inside. Like, that's 1% of the time that you actually need cooling. And now you've got a system that's designed for that, and generally it's by default 10% oversized anyway. You just don't need that capacity almost ever, and that leads to less quality of comfort in the house, slightly higher energy bills if you have a single speed unit, but more so is comfort. If you can run at exactly what you need, you're removing moisture at a better clip, and you're more comfortable throughout the house, and on and on. There's a lot of benefits to focus on. Energy is one of them, but it's not our main selling point at our office.
Just minor comment there that VRF has a different moisture control dynamic. It does have longer run times. It doesn't obviate, I just want to make sure I get this out, the need for dedicated drying function, although it can have an impact on that. I guess interesting. So we've covered VRF, and it does have more of a cost, and it has a learning curve for you guys. It is now, in my opinion, starting to be recognized by leading builders, leading architects as I should do VRF. It's like a misalignment. It always gets me when I go on the AI home store and I see this beautiful house, and then I open the mechanical closet, which I'm not technically supposed to do, and it's like, oh my gosh, I see this system that could be in any production builder's home, and I see flex duct and duct board, and I can take a flashlight in the filter slot and see that it shines out the back into the back of the mechanical closet that it's in. It's just like, because it was out of sight, it was out of mind, and it budget anyway. But that's going away, I'm happy to say. Frankly, I hear what I love to hear is that you guys aren't really trying to compete. You're trying to offer really high quality systems, really good value, and a lot of skill. But the reality is you're competing in some level for price. And so to go away from ductboard and flex distribution to metal plenums, that's another big transition. And I kind of know where you guys both are on it, and you're looking it square in the eye. And where are you at with it? Please tell us.
So we, when we present a budget for a customer, the first thing that they always cut is the metal duct.
After the DHU, they cut the metal duct.
After the DHU, because that's where the big price increases. Of course, metal duct's not as easy to work with.
No.
And we've tried other options of trying to get less friction as far as like sealing our duct plenums on the inside.
Yeah, I saw you did a spray and air barrier inside the plenum.
And that's still time consuming and increases
You haven't
the
done
price.
it on all your jobs.
We haven't done it all our jobs. So now it's come down to budget and preference. We don't mind doing metal duct. We probably prefer to do metal work, but sometimes the price doesn't get us quite there.
That's well said. Though there is a market norm, yeah. And what about you, Patrick?
So in our market, we are probably 98% ductboard and flex. Even on higher end custom homes, a little bit to budget and a little bit to, trying to get things where they want to go, I suppose, to that regard. But it goes back to design ultimately, and what I have been thinking a lot about is that plumbers used to use copper pipe, and they had to plan out their systems that branches had to come off X, Y, and Z areas. They needed to have straight runs, and they needed to be nice and clean with their work. And then along came PEX, and they snake it everywhere, and it's like a spider's nest up there. And I think that's what Flex allowed air conditioning companies to be sloppy with their design, and it allowed them to be sloppy with their installation to the point that everybody blames the Flex duct for poor performance. I believe that if you design the Flex properly and you install it as it's supposed to be installed, you run it tight, you don't curl it around the beam 3 times before you hit your box, then it can perform maybe not quite as efficiently, but it can perform to provide a lot of comfort for your house, and it is less expensive to install. Still takes thoughtful planning and thoughtful installation.
Right. Yeah. And so the only nuance I would make on that, and keep in mind, I've been just soaking for 3-4 years now in IAQ stuff, and it's the supply plenum. It's the first, let's say, 10 feet off of the air handler where you really have a lot of moisture vapor. If you have porous materials over the 5, 7, 10, 15 year time, who knows? But I also have seen, I've seen some old flex duct. No, I've seen some old ductboard plenums. In fact, I think, Nacho, you've dropped some off that were, we've talked about it before. They were almost like gratuitously gross. It's like, oh my God, what happened? Oh, yeah. And I've seen some that come out okay. I just happened to look in mine. We installed a dehumidifier in my house last year, cut a big hole in the side of my supply plenum, and my whole supply plenum has this kind of like Gaussian curve shaped mold pattern on the top and the bottom. So you can just see it. Here's where the humid air was blowing out and spittling into my supply plenum, and here's where my mold grows.
So is some of that mold growth due to air leakage at connections of your plenum and seeping through your fibrous ductboard that wasn't sealed very well?
It could be, yeah, because the backside, you know how it is. So my home, I built my home, but I did not install the mechanical or tell them to put it any particular place. But it was tucked over really close to the eaves of the roof, such that getting to that little triangle at the back was basically impossible. And so there's some mastic on the inside of my plenum chassis connection, which, that's not the air control layer, air barrier.
No, definitely not.
Okay, but I want to just qualify. So I agree that flex duct and ductboard used wisely, used thoughtfully, it can be fine. You have to pull the flex tight. And it also is true what you said, Patrick, that it can lead to sloppiness. It can lead to laziness. And we see a lot of that. Do you guys subcontract your air distribution systems?
No.
Do you, Patrick?
No.
Many of the big players do. And not only do they subcontract to an ever-changing pool of people with, I'm trying to be gentle, as you can hear, like questionable skills in terms of evaluating duct diameters and register location.
We see them at the supply house in the mornings, and they look funny because it's almost like an Indian train where there's just a pickup truck with 10 feet high of flex duct tied into. Yeah. And they're exploited, just flat out. They're probably being exploited. They're getting, I'm thinking like $300 or $400 per house to run flex, and where it takes my team, a house that these guys knock out in the day takes my guys 3 to 4 days.
Yeah,
because we take the time.
That's good to hear, Nacho. Yeah, because I was recently told I was crazy for taking 4 days on a certain size house, so I'm happy to hear you say that.
Yeah. So since when is speed the ultimate quality, but schedule and budget are king in some ways?
Yeah, and it takes it takes us a lot more than $500 to get to a rough-in state.
But the big firms around here, the dominant firms, the ones on the radio with trucks all over the road, that's their business model.
And then they have a team of guys that just goes behind and fixes
triage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they have huge, what do they call them? The real big team of truly skilled people, are not just on the air distribution side, but after the installation occurs, they wait for the clients to call, and then they send these really skilled people to fix things.
Exactly. So it's kind of the wrong way to do it.
Yeah. Let's just see if it works and
see if we get a call back. And
yeah. So Nacho, Patrick talked about his house, and I think that's a very interesting metric. Is like, what would an installer do for his own house? And I know you've been thinking about it.
I remember my wife threw me a surprise party when I turned 40, and Kristof came to the house, and the first thing he did is went around the corner and see what kind of system I had. Of course, I didn't build that house, so I had an inheritance.
You got to pass. But you're building a house.
We're building a house right now, and so I consulted with Kristof and as a friend. And as far as my, wall systems,
you got an interesting enclosure.
We got a really interesting enclosure. I was able to do
shipping containers, right?
Yeah, they're shipping containers, skinned with stucco. I mean, we got exterior insulation, so it's a really challenging construction.
What about mechanical? Yeah.
Mechanical, we've actually got almost 1,500 square feet per ton. That's what we're shooting
awesome.
for.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. And what kind of equipment?
And we're doing carrier heat recovery.
Oh, sweet. The new single phase.
The new single phase heat recovery. So it's a 6-ton. It's a little oversized because it came out to 4 tons.
Uh-huh. And yes, it's only available in 6.
But it's only available in 6. So we'll have a little room to put in a mini split in the garage type of deal.
Patrick, are you seeing that single phase heat recovery? Is that exciting to you? Or?
That is very exciting to me and very attractive. I haven't seen any of it. Obviously, like I said, we have only installed Mitsubishi, and I think we spoke a while back and you had mentioned Carrier came out with it. Mm-hmm. So I'd imagine it won't be long before everybody else kind of follows suit.
The only challenge with that system is the size of the condenser, and it's almost 800 pounds.
Whoa, 800 pounds.
So it's not something that you can just haul around the house.
Not with that attitude.
No, exactly. Well, you need a few really strong guys and the 800 pounds.
Yeah, and it's big. It's big in box. It's kind of like a big
tall,
Nacho,
like a big refrigerator, almost the size of a
refrigerator.
But that weighs 800 pounds. So some if you're on the side of a hill, it would be crane.
And it is more of a commercial form.
So yeah, you have to kind of look out for that. Mm-hmm. But as far as being able to not have to worry about all the units being in the same mode at the same time, it's amazing, right? So,
yeah.
And that's one of the challenges with VRF. I'm sure you've run across, Patrick, where, well, my air conditioner is not working, and so one of the rooms is still calling for heat in there.
I recently drove an hour and a half for an M series with a dual head, and that was his problem. He had the master unit on heat and the other one on cool, and it wasn't cooling. So anyway, the guy felt awful.
So as far as this choice between Unitary and VRF, you guys are both solidly into the VRF camp, right?
Totally. Yeah, we drank the Kool-Aid.
With all of our new construction, I am definitely in the VRF camp. Retrofit, it's a little harder to start to cut that into a house, but yes.
But it's starting. It's got inroads. It's really just the price, or is it? Why would it be harder in a retrofit? I mean, refrigerant line size compatibility, or
you've got refrigerant lines that are generally concealed in a wall, and people are less likely to let you run something on the exterior of their home. Mm-hmm. You do have a pretty drastic price difference when they have an existing air distribution system that they're going to keep and don't want to modify heavily to accommodate 2 air handlers or 3 or something to that effect. And then the electrical wiring sometimes doesn't quite line up. I know we can do the VRF with a single zone inside, like with the Mitsubishi, especially now they have their normal looking air handler, and we've done a few of those. We get into that, and then it's more just line set compatibility and people not looking at the way that it runs. The fan runs constantly versus cycling like on a inverter system or something to that effect.
Which can be sold as a benefit too.
It can be sold as a benefit, absolutely.
Okay, so I have a last question for you guys, and I'm going to try to set it up. Like thinking big picture, you guys are in the comfort delivery business. You guys both know, I know from talking to you, and you were at the Humid Climate Conference, both of you, which is amazing, by the way, that there was also another firm, Indoor Weather Professionals from Austin. So you had, here you are getting advanced training, going out to conferences. I think that's great. So big picture, you're in the comfort business, and where I'm getting at is the health business, or the impact on indoor health conditions, right? You can't really control a person's health, but you can control the conditions inside. And that's the enclosure, which you don't really get to control. That's impacted, the health is impacted by the choice of indoor emitters, whether it's cooking or their flame retardants in their couch or the vinyl flooring. You don't get to control that. But then you can control the choice of the equipment for space, temperature. And then there's the big three, what we call the big three. It's like particulate capture or filtration, which is one of the reasons of VRF, if it's constantly filtering. Dehumidification, which, it's as simple as saying to a client, like, well, every major study for the last 20 years shows that if there's one thing that correlates with indoor health, it's controlling dampness. And so it's filtering, drying, and ventilating. So that's the background. Now I'm going to ask you, what's your vision of the future of residential HVAC? Like, where is the industry going?
Well, definitely inverter, VRF totally. I'm a big fan of ductless units. So talking about indoor air quality, I think ductless would be
So a ductless plus like an ERV or something.
Ductless plus an ERV or ductless plus a ventilating dehumidifier. We've got a few projects where we've actually torn out ducted units and installed ductless. And
that's exciting.
We got a project coming up where we're doing the new MLCs, which are the one-way cassettes, which I think that those are going to be super cool. Because there's a big pushback, especially with architects and not wanting things on their wall, but they're just so much more efficient, right? And they perform better, and I'm sure you agree that they're better for
there's really
allergies and indoor air quality. So I'm hoping that that's the way it goes, and that the industry goes that route.
And what about you, Patrick? I know it's putting you on the spot, but what's your vision of the future of residential HVAC? When you retire, what's it going to be like? Or you're retiring soon?
Yeah, maybe next week if it works out right. I think VRF is definitely the way of the future. There is a battle between the ducted versus ductless market from what I see. And to Nacho's point is very few people in our area like to see it on the wall or even in the ceiling. We've done a handful of projects this year with cassettes, and those make it a lot easier. I am excited about the one-way cassettes that are out there. So those make it a little less of an eyesore. Our market really is a lot of ducted equipment still, but what I see changing more than anything is the enclosure. More and more people are bringing the ductwork and equipment in the conditioned space by the use of spray foam, and I think that's a good thing. Whether you like foam or not, I think bringing the ductwork and equipment into the conditioned space is the key. If you're going to have ducted, it better be in the conditioned space, and I see that more than I do the ductless systems out there on the market today. And I think that's the key. Whether you do ductless or ducted, just make sure it's in the conditioned space.
Yeah, well said. And I'll just elaborate on that, and then we'll wrap up. Is that ACA now has a new manual coming out, low load homes, ACA LLH instead of manual J, and this is for homes that are 1,500 square feet per ton and above. And we're doing some passive house designs right now where it's coming out 2,300, 2,700 square feet per ton. So when you get to that level, it's interesting. It cuts both ways because in one sense, the enclosure is so robust that the thermal comfort is mediated by that enclosure to a large degree. And things like register location and throw and mixing are less important. But at the same time, you guys are given far, far fewer CFM, cubic feet per minute of air, per square foot of house to work with. So you got to be on your game with the distribution system. So it's interesting. And what I mean by that is that as we as a society take homes the way like the iPhone has taken phones, or maybe Tesla has taken cars or something, it's going to get more complicated. It's going to change the nature of the industry, which is ultimately a good thing, but not an easy thing. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? Either one of you?
I'm just excited for the future of that, like you were saying, with the VRF and everything that's involved. And it's exciting to learn and grow into new areas of our work, and it's constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope it doesn't stay the same and continues to evolve and continue to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking back from where we were when I started putting in tin sear with a gas furnace and a coil you can see through basically on the evaporator coils. It's amazing what comfort is today versus what people thought it was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Nacho? Any final
I'm
thoughts?
so excited about the technology that's coming out. Patrick was saying now we got a Carrier 43 SEER ductless.
43 SEER.
43 SEER ductless. There's talks about built-in dehumidification in the air handlers.
Mm-hmm.
So now there's not a separate piece of equipment. That 43 SEER, by the way, it's got a true dehumidification feature on it.
Yeah, I've heard about that. That's really exciting.
Yeah, some exciting things coming up. Just kind of staying on top of the technology and what equipment's coming out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys are both phenomenally well poised in the sense that you already understand technology. So new technology is just the same, information stream, just you're ready to embrace it. And what you have is you have business systems and business procedures and ethics and the integrity to stay ahead. I'm excited for you guys.
Thank you.
I really am. So Patrick, Nacho, thank you very much for taking the time. And thank you all for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, you guys.
Thanks.
Yeah.
The Building Science Podcast is a production of Positive Energy in Austin, Texas, an engineering firm dedicated to the idea that if we can design around people, a good building will follow. This episode is brought to you by the dedicated women and men who work day in and day out to change the industry one project at a time. If you find these episodes meaningful, please share it with someone you know who might like it. You can also donate a small amount to help us keep the show going at our website, positiveenergy.pro, and please get in touch with the sponsors of our episodes and tell them you like hearing their name on the show. Big thanks to Patrick and Nacho for sharing their thoughts. This episode was produced by Kristof Irwin and Michael Walker and supervised by a pack of dogs by the names of Jesse, Luna, Bear, and any other neighborhood mutt who just shows up to the office wanting treats. Y'all come back now, you hear?